because and it's going to take the Web3, community to stop looking at Web3 as a feature. It's not a feature, it's infrastructure. That's all it is. It just enables you to build something else. So what is it that you're building that's attractive? You got to talk to Web2 gamers in terms that they care about.
Welcome back. We're back to it in another episode of 100x Gaming, the episode focused on the best games building in Web3. Today, I'm joined by Rodrigo, the CEO of Moonray. If you've never heard of Moonray, I've gotten the chance to play this twice already, and I got to tell you, I've never really been a type of hack and slash outside of like MMOs, RPGs, but when you add a PvP sort of twist to it, I was hooked immediately. Rodrigo, thank you for joining us today. Just to get started with the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in Moonray, what that sort of vision was like, and how you ended up here in Web3?
Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100x. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Let's talk about Reactor, a proof-of-work blockchain that introduces a brand new economic model, DePIN mining software, a gaming distribution platform, the RKR token, and their game, Minions of Steel, that's proving their thesis by seamlessly integrating proof-of-work token mining with gaming. Through allowing players to mine with their own GPU while playing, not only do they essentially make gaming free, they make software free, and they present an AI-proof income for everyone. If you want to take a glimpse into the future and get there early, explore Reactor's ecosystem at the link below. Crypto does not need to be complicated. Kadena is building the human layer of blockchain by giving the power back to the people and allowing them to build products that make a difference for humanity. Founded by ex-JP Morgan and SEC blockchain leads, Kadena develops easy-to-understand, human-readable tools and solutions that focus on the long-term development of the space, not just short-term gains. Simply put, if we want real, regular people to enter and enjoy Web3, Kadena is making a way. To learn more, check out Kadena.io, follow them on Twitter at Kadena_IO, or watch our episode with them. Astrobit is the king of automated trading, and now they've introduced a freemium model. Put those trading fees to use. How does it work? Sign up to an exchange with one of Astrobit's affiliate links and receive at least 30 free credits as a loyalty bonus. Then earn credits on your trading fees. The more you trade, the more credits you can generate. Use those credits towards trading bots and strategies. In other words, you can create a passive income stream at no cost. Find more deets in the description below.
Absolutely. Yeah. Moonray started, really, I was actually going back into very old videos, and my earliest videos are from 4 years ago. And initially I started like a very small thing, with just a handful of guys to try and do something that was new visually. We just wanted to do like a new type of sci-fi. So I was just really bored with, near future dystopian sci-fi and, medieval kind of themes. Everyone's doing it and it's cool, but everyone's already doing it. So what can we do that's different? So we started exploring with visual ideas and thought about, okay, let's make a third person hack and slash kind of thing. So it started as a very small indie project. And we did some crowdfunding and it worked well. And then in the summer of, 2021, when Web3 was really starting to take off, we saw that, and we just saw that that's going to change the business model of gaming. It's going to change the way that people can game in the future, because you can actually own your assets. And for a game that's going to be very visual, we're like, okay, if we can make all these cool characters and you can actually own it and then trade it, that's going to be really, really cool. So that's where we jumped into Web3. It was, summer 2021, and we kept exploring the game idea itself. The team grew. We got more funding then. And we were able to find a really good team. It took us a long time to actually put the team together. And it took a long time to go through different prototypes of what we want the gameplay to be. Eventually, we realized we need to focus on what we're doing now, which is PvP. We're really focusing on 4 versus 4. We experimented with larger formats, more battle royale kind of style, gaming, and that's cool too. But, there's something that's very, very chaotic about 20 people on a map, 30 people on a map. I'm a huge Halo player. I haven't played, recently. I've been so busy, but I played Halo, like every Halo forever. And 4 versus 4 was always for me the best. I loved 8 versus 8. It's cool, but it's just, there's a point where it's you get killed, and it's not really because you did anything wrong. It's just too many guys. You're just going to get shot, and there's nothing you can do about it. 4 versus 4, you still have much more tactical kind of team-based dynamics. So that's what we've really focused on. And it took a while. We had to basically throw out all the code and start over 3 times to get to where we are now. And that's because once you decide, okay, this is the kind of gameplay we need, then you've got to basically have to restructure all the code, especially the net code. For a PvP game, net code is absolutely crucial. Like, can we get smooth gameplay with melee combat, which is a lot harder than a shooter, because, first person or third person shooter, the hitboxes are super simple. With melee combat, the animation of how the character is swinging the weapon, where the hitbox is, where you can stop, start, where you can parry, all that has to be really, really smooth in a networked environment, or else the gameplay is going to suffer. So we spent a lot of time on the technical infrastructure to get the gameplay right. And then in the meantime, we had, really great art team. And our art team, we think is, just second to none. It started with a comic book, so we have a comic book out. You can get it on Amazon. It's in comic shops. Book 1 has been out for 6 months or so, maybe 8 months. Book 2 is coming out in a few weeks. So we have these like crazy comic book guys that are just doing really weird ideas in a comic book setting. And then our game team basically just reads the comic, looks at the comic. One of the comic guys is the art director. And so we just kind of integrate the art style from the comic into the game.
Nice. That's really awesome. And one of the things I want to ask you, for anyone that hasn't had the chance to play the game or try out one of these playtests, how would you describe the core game loop like? What can you paint a picture? I know we're going to have probably some gameplay playing in the background here, but can you explain it for anyone that's listening? What can they expect when they jump into a match?
The shortest description is Devil May Cry meets Quake. And that's how we think about it internally. So it's melee combat, but with ranged weapons, but the Quake style battle arena, or Halo, where it's smallish battle arenas and very, very team focused. So the game that's probably closest to us that we've also taken inspiration from, that we get, that we also play internally, is Naraka Blade Point, which is a PvP melee, but they're really battle royale heavy. So it starts a battle royale game, and that's kind of their main and most popular game mode, which is great. But even in a battle royale setting, what you end up doing is it's a lot of 1 versus 2 fights, even in a big map. So it's like, okay, let's design for small scale. Right now, the game just has a one-handed sword, a two-handed sword, a rifle, and a cannon. And our idea is the game has to be fun at its most basic, simple level. In other words, 1 versus 1 with the most simple weapons possible. So no gimmicks, no grenades that bounce, or a warp cannon that shoots a tornado or something. Okay, that'll come later. The simplest has to be fun. You have 2 guys with a sword. Is it fun? In 1v1. Okay. What happens in 1v2? Is it balanced? Okay, that starts to unbalance things. What about 2v3? Is sword combat still fun? But if the very most basic, simple version of the game is fun, then you can build off that. And that's what we've been really focused on. So that'd be the game. It's just PvP melee combat with ranged weapons, but very focused on the melee.
And thankfully, I have had the chance to try this out. And one of the things that I was thinking about as I played this, it was very easy to pick up. I mean, you have a sword, you have a longer sword, you have a couple of things that you can shoot, and then you have your fist if you want to just go out with your fist. But the thing is, with a lot of these games, the ones that are easy to pick up, then become harder to master. Where do you see the sort of the skill curve coming into play here? Will it become with combos? Will it come to the parry? Where does the skill gap come from in this game?
I mean, that's a good question. It's something that we talk about internally a lot, and, easy to pick up, hard to master is one of our mantras. And that's going to be a balancing issue that we have going forward forever, I think, because there's a tension between, making a game that has a high enough skill ceiling where you can get esports pros. Like we're going to start having tournaments, and we're going to, esports is one of our goals with this. It's hard to design for esports. I mean, you have to design for it, but if it happens, it kind of happens naturally. But it needs to have that skill potential. And it is going to come from combos, knowing how to use the parry, knowing when to use the parry. We are going to be moving more into team-based objective modes. So we think that team communication is going to be more and more important. So that's what we're going to be, after we launch early access, we're going to have some team-based modes in there. They're going to be relatively simple. I think that we're going to go heavy into team-based objectives, because that's where that next skill ceiling will come, where, 4 guys can come get on a team, figure out the basics and have fun. But if you really want to win a game, you're going to have to plan and, okay, who's going for the enemy base, who's defending, who's taking this route, lanes, and that sort of thing. And we think that's where we want the real skill ceiling to come from, is good team communication more than anything.
Okay. And so instead of just one person being able to 1v4 the entire team, really coming down back to that team communication to be able to have that be the difference between two fights. Because if you have two teams that it's like, hey, the one person just carrying everyone else, then you don't really need to have communication because that person can just go off by themselves and kill everyone else. But it's really going to be more a focus like, hey, can four solid players beat four other solid players? And the difference really be the communication and the coordination between the four players. Is that sort of what you're hoping?
That's our goal. Now, there's always going to be guys that are so good. I mean, like we have some like pro Naraka guys testing it now, and they're so good that it's always going to, if they're on a team, it's always unfair, so it's tough to balance, but I don't know. They have the reactions and everything. So balancing is always tricky, but that is the goal. And I think, with the right kind of team-based objectives, you can force the players individually on the team to make a decision. Like we're going to go left instead of right in this map. Okay. Now, no matter what, no matter how good you are, someone comes on the right side because you went left, your base is open or whatever, and now you're in trouble. So the maps and the objectives can compensate for that a little bit, but good players are always going to be important. There's no way around that, and that's also good. I mean, it rewards players for spending a lot of time and having fun. So we want that too.
When you talk about a competitive scene, and that's what gets me really excited because I'm a competitive player. If there's something competitive in a game, that's what gets me hooked. Like if I feel like, oh my, like damn, I just lost to this kid, and like it makes me feel bad. Like I could have done better, but now if the next time I can go ahead and beat them, it's like okay, I'm getting better. And if the better I get, the more competitive I want to get, and the closer to the top I want to get. And you guys already have a leaderboard in there, and every time I get a chance to play, I'm like, can I jump a couple more spots up in that leaderboard? But with the competitiveness also comes one of the things that I see a lot of games miss is like you try to make it as competitive as possible, but then it comes down to, especially early on in games, it's not so much of the skill, but it's like who has a better ping. And when you talk about a melee game where it's like the other person can parry me, I feel like ping is going to become very important. How are you guys handling the technicalities behind the game to make sure that those kind of things don't become an issue when you try to go into like the tournaments and things like that? So my ping issue, or like if I have 100 ping, I can't parry the person because they have a better ping than me.
That's super, super important for a game, especially a melee game. I mean, any competitive game, but especially a melee game. And that's really the work that we've focused on over the last 2 years. And it comes down to the netcode. So decisions you make early on can really affect you in the future. And for us, it was number one, Unreal Engine. It's going to have the best performance. There are other melee games made in Unity. You're going to run into limitations of Unity no matter what. So it's Unreal Engine. It's designing the combat system and the way that animations function with inputs and at what stage in the animation things can happen. And then making sure the network replication is as solid as possible. So the first year we were experimenting with art, ideas, stuff like that, but really we could have just played the whole game in a gray box with just hitboxes because it was all netcode. And the thing is that once you get pretty far down the road of like, okay, we've got our netcode established. If you see an issue later on and then you want to undo it, and it's really tough to rewrite things after a certain point. Like now you've got a code base that the underlying infrastructure is already there. It's very, very difficult to change. So it really comes down to netcode, which are early decisions. You need to have a really good engineering team. You can compensate for it a little bit with having more servers, and that helps. But I think we'll end up with a West Coast, East Coast, North American servers, one or two in Europe. And we think that's all we'll need to service North America and Europe. So basically 2 to 3 server regions in each continent. We're going to have, servers in Asia as well. And that definitely helps. But if you don't have good netcode, it doesn't matter how many servers you have. You can be neighbors. You can be on a LAN and still have issues. And right now we have our internal weekly play test is on a European server. And we have guys from the US playing, with like 100 millisecond ping, and they have no issues with parry and things like that. So that's kind of what we're designing for. Worst case, we're hoping you have a 50 millisecond ping. We're going to be working on the server infrastructure to get that. But if you have 100, you should still be okay.
And the other thing I wanted to ask here is if everything is going well, looking a couple years down the road, where do you hope to see the game be? Like at what stage do you hope to see it? Do you hope that tournaments are becoming a thing? Because I know you said that the esports scene and the competitive scene, you want it to be a lot more organic. But ideally, like in an ideal world, where would you hope to see that this game is in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, so, we've got a lot of ideas and we're already getting a lot of feedback from everyone that's playing the game. And there's a few things that keep coming up and that we've discussed internally that, we're definitely going to experiment with. One is MOBA-ish gameplay. So in other words, once you have good basic combat, things like, okay, now there's a mini boss on the map, and if you beat the mini boss, your team gets a buff. Upgrading your weapons inside of a match, right? We don't want any play to win, so you're not gonna be able to buy a weapon that's better. But inside of a match, maybe you're upgrading your abilities, your weapons, or something like that. That we think will add a really good team dynamic. And once we have really good team gameplay like that, we're definitely going to be doing tournaments. Some of them are going to be hosted by us. The nice thing about Web3, one of the features of Web3, we think, is that we can let people host their own tournaments in a very secure way. And so groups can get together, host their own tournament. It's great for us. And it's great for that group. So that could be esports teams, guilds, whatever it is, just any community, DAOs, any group of gamers that wants to get together and they want to host their own tournament. We'll provide that infrastructure to make that really, really easy and seamless. So we think tournaments is going to be, a big part of it, but really a tournament's always going to be for a relatively small portion of the players. Most players are just going to want to have fun to a certain degree, but tournaments are going to be a really cool spectacle. So we think a lot of people will watch tournaments, because it's kind of fun to watch. How many people actually want to get in there? It's going to be a different story, but we're also going to enable, things like, forms of, you wagering essentially on matches or on in a tournament. Maybe, two teams get together and they put something on the line. Maybe it's a set of skins, some rare NFTs or something like that. Hey, we'll wager our cool skins versus your cool skins, and let's see. In Web3, you can do that securely, and I think it's one of the features.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you bring a really good point, because you're right. The competitiveness is really going to come down to the upper echelon of players. But for the casual players, where do you see them fitting into the image? Are you hoping that they just have public matches? Will there be a rank system? What kind of sort of game loop do you hope that they're going to have in the future as this game progresses?
There's definitely going to be, casual matches and ranked matches. And then there's going to be more of the tournament mode. I mean, what we hope is that we have, we want a lot of people to get in. We're targeting the general player is like a mid-core player for us. Like, we're not going for the hardcore players, because if you do that, then only hardcore players will play. We want mid-core players to be able to come in, have fun. It's enjoyable. They're at least, playing with their friends and talking trash, and they're having fun doing that. But there is that last little bit of the skill ceiling that you may not even know about. And you may find on your own, or maybe at some point you watch a video, you're like, oh, I didn't even know that you could do whatever. I don't know, parry in the air and then jump down. Like, how did you do that? Okay. Then you take that last little, bit of 10% of gameplay, but that makes all the difference between the top guys and the casual guys. That's enough to let people, practice and learn to go into tournaments, but still have that separation where the really good guys are going to be much, much better. But it's really just a few tricks that they learned and that they practiced. And that's kind of where we want to get. But the mass of the players are just going to be in there having fun, basically.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Once I learned, I didn't even know that you can jump up and slash down. And once I saw someone do it, I was like, dude, you got to teach me how to do that, because that helped me survive so many battles in there that I was like, yeah, that's something that definitely everyone should know. The other thing I wanted to ask here is, right now, a lot of things, not only in Web3, but Web2 seem to be clones of another. Like, Battle Royale has been the meta for the last couple of years, and now we're starting to see people start to try other different types of games. Where do you see Moonray fitting in that sort of landscape, and why did you guys choose to build this route? Like, what about, was it your background? Was it what you were? Did you feel like there was a need in the space for a game like this, or is it just a passion project? You're like, hey, you know what? This is a game that I want to play, so I want to make sure I build it for myself.
I mean, the very, very early part was a passion project, but I knew that to turn this into a business, we need to stand out and be different, and you can't be a clone. So that's where we start going into, okay, visually we need to be different, and then in gameplay we need to be different. We need to do something that stands out. That's why I think, and we chose one of the hardest things to do, which is networked melee combat. It's technically the most challenging. But I think that we basically got, 80% of it, working solidly. Once you have that, where I think we're going to go is, the team, like I keep saying, the team-based MOBA route. That I think is unique, because there are MOBAs out there. There are third-person MOBAs, but the gameplay in them is still super, super simple. It's really button mashing. There's not really a parry. There's not that tactical fighting. It's like upgrading your abilities, press the right button. The attacks are very simple. The gameplay itself is simple from a pure combat perspective. It's more of like the in-match meta, let's say, where you're upgrading your abilities in the right way. And that's fun. But we think if you can make a team-based game where the combat gameplay is, fighting game level or approaching fighting game level. So you have that really tactical combat with dodges, grapple hook, parry, combos. And then you add more of the MOBA style gameplay where, okay, in-match upgrading of your weapon, mini bosses, minions that you have to fight. Then you start adding, you basically make a really like high performance MOBA, like an action MOBA that really where the combat itself is really, really intense. And a 1-versus-1 fight comes down to, who actually has the better, fighting gameplay style. I mean, like I'm also like a huge Street Fighter player. I'm not that good anymore, but I've been playing Street Fighter forever. That's kind of the goal. It's like, one-on-one match has to be not quite as tactical as Street Fighter because in a 2-dimensional setting, you can do a lot more. It's a little more difficult with what we do, but that level of tactical gameplay. But that's where we want to be. And we knew we want to compete from the beginning. This was a Web2 project. We're going to go compete with Web2 games. We're going to do it. We're doing it now. To do that, you've got to do something different. And so we always think, we don't think of competing in Web3. That's not how we design things. We need to go out into Web2 and compete. Okay, what's it going to take there? And you can't just do a clone, and you can't just do a reskinned clone. You've got to introduce new gameplay. And that's what we're going to do. I think by the end of the year, we're going to have our first, MOBA-ish team objective mode. And then I think we're going to start, making some noise.
Yeah, I think you couldn't be more right. I think a lot of times the games in this space, it feels like we're sort of like in a vacuum. Like everything has to be Web3 and like everyone's competing in this little space. But in reality, like a game that's going to be really successful isn't just going to be successful in Web3. It's going to be able to bridge the gap to Web2, and like all the Web2 players and just regular gamers are going to want to play the game just because the game is fun, not because of the NFTs, not because of the potential token, not because of the economics of it. It's just like at the end of the day, gamers just want to play fun games. And if you can go ahead and speak in that language, then everyone, both Web3 and Web2, will enjoy it and have a fun experience. With that idea in mind, and you mentioned this a little bit about like sort of the Street Fighter mechanics and just that, but in a sort of third-person open world, but also with other people in this space. Do you have like a target audience in mind, like a target player, like someone who, because this is a very unique, I personally have never played like a PvP hack and slash, but you did mention you got some inspiration from other games. Do you have a specific target player that would really enjoy this? Or is this just like, hey, if you love games, this is something for you?
No, we are right now. We think the initial community is going to come from people that play games like if you play Naraka, For Honor, maybe Smite, you're going to understand our game. Smite's a little like the gameplay itself isn't as complex, but For Honor has really good online modes. That was a really fun game. I really like that game. Where it's also the combat is very tactical. It's very challenging. 1v1 is very fun, but they have 4v4 modes. So what's that other? There's a medieval game. I always forget the name of it. Anyways, but there are some communities where there's third person melee multiplayer that exists. It's still relatively small compared to the shooter genres or the StarCraft type of games where it's a very different kind of mechanic. So that's where we're going to go first. Then I do think that slowly we're going to pull in people if you like shooters and third person shooters. I mean, we do have ranged weapons. We do have guns and things. We just balance it very carefully so you can't just sit back and shoot. We don't want it to turn into a shooter. You do need to learn how to use a sword. But I think there's going to be enough players that do like games, first-person shooters or things like that. If you like Overwatch, you're going to get the team dynamic. And then you think, well, I've never really thought about, using a sword. Well, what would that be like? Well, come in and try it. And, it's actually really fun. And we like that combination of having melee weapons and having ranged weapons because it really introduces a whole new kind of tactical thinking. It's like, okay, I'm going to shoot, then run up, hit him with the sword, grapple out, turn around, shoot again. And it's just, it's another layer of complexity, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, and if you're going to try this game after watching this episode, I tried. I was one of the people that was like, oh, I have a cannon. I might just sit back and try to hit everyone from the outside. You don't have a lot of ammo, and there's not enough ammo on the map for you to just sit back. You definitely have to get in there and try to slash away. But it has really been a lot of fun mechanics, and seeing that and really trying to, because outside of like MMORPGs, like I did New World and things like that, I've never really been like, oh, I got to go and hack and slash everything and try to make sure that I survive. So it's definitely something that is itching, something that I've never had in a game before, because I wasn't one of those players that play the other games that you took inspiration from this. So I'm definitely excited to see where this sort of goes from here. But with all that said, you talked about some of the things that entice you about Web3 and sort of the crypto aspect of it that brought you guys here, the asset ownership. What kind of those things do you guys already have implemented, and what are some of those sort of Web3 aspects that you guys hope to implement in the future?
So what we are working towards, which, I think this year we'll have at least the early versions of it, is, what you buy to play the game, is going to be some sort of character that has some sort of progression, that you can unlock color variations and but it's all going to be visual. It's cosmetic. Nothing that affects gameplay. You can't get a more powerful sword or more powerful gun or anything like that. If you bought that character and you spent some time and you unlocked a bunch of things, that's your effort. You own that. You can keep it. You can trade it. You can do whatever you want with it. So that's the first thing, which is very easy. I think it's very easy, for gamers to understand, Web2 gamers. There's a lot of gamers in a lot of games that have accounts that they've got all the skins unlocked or this, that, the other. It turns out they have some rare skin from a previous season. What can you do with it? Well, I go on eBay, go on some shady site. That's not, those are the only options they have. So we think Web2 gamers are going to totally understand that, especially if the onboarding is seamless, which is definitely going to happen. Maybe not right away, but, very, very soon, a Web2 gamer, you download the game, you make your account. If you want to buy something, print a credit card. You will never even know that you actually bought an NFT. You don't need to know. Then we'll provide the trading infrastructure so gamers can trade with each other. So now you create an incentive for people to, buy cool skins, try it out. If you didn't like it, well, you can try and sell it. Maybe it doesn't need to make money. I think this, the Web3 degens get too invested in it's got to go up. It's got to go up. No, it doesn't. That's not necessarily. I mean, Bitcoin should go up. That should go up, right? I agree with you there. A skin, how about you buy a skin for $15? You play with it for 3 months, and you turn around and you sell it for 12. Okay, you play with that skin. You play for $1 a month. I mean, that's really good too. To the average gamer, it's that's great. That's better than what you have now, which is you buy a skin. Guess what? Steam owns it. Nothing you can do. Fortnite owns it. Nothing you can do about it. So as long as you can kind of try things, try new skins, unlock things in them. You got the third color, the fourth color. You got the cannon with the cool VFX. Okay, keep it or not. Turn around and sell it. That asset ownership, that's super simple to understand. More and more, it's easy to implement. On the Web3 side, it's actually really most of the difficulty comes on our side, on the game developer side. On the Web3 side, I mean, making and selling NFTs is simple, and trading them is not very complicated. It's more us on making the character progression be meaningful and supporting it on our end. That's step one. And we think that Web2 gamers are going to understand that, up to and including the fact that, if you want to play the game, you need to have, let's say access to it in one way, whether it be a battle pass or something like that. In Web3, what if you buy a game for $30 or $40? And if you don't like it, what if you turn around and you sell your access to it? You sell it for $20, $25. Maybe you sell it for $30. And now you don't have to, because you don't want to play that game anymore at all. Well, you can make your money. It's like the used games, the way used games used to be. When I was a kid, you would play a game for a while, turn around and sell it for half price, in the used market. And now with Steam and with consoles, you can't do that. So I think Web2 gamers are going to understand that. And that's very, very doable in Web3. That's step one. That's the easy stuff.
I have a question here, and this is one thing that I do like to ask not only builders but gamers also in the space. And I think you're both. You're not only a builder but also a gamer. I'm in agreement with. I agree with you. Understanding those concepts should be super simple. But one of the things that we've seen is that a lot of times Web2 gamers or just regular gamers that haven't tried Web3 hear NFTs, hear Web3, hear crypto, and they just completely shut it down, no matter how good the game is. And it's it doesn't really make sense, because once you understand why those things exist and how those things can benefit us as gamers, it makes complete sense why we would want to move this way. What do you think is stopping people, or is the blockage, and how do you hope to overcome that with Moonray? How are you guys going to tackle that? Hey, once they hear crypto, once they hear Web3's involved, they don't care. They don't want to no longer play the game.
It's definitely a challenge. I think some of that's just going to take time, and it's going to take games that aren't clones, basically, because it's and it's going to take the Web3, community to stop looking at Web3 as a feature. It's not a feature. It's infrastructure. That's all it is. It just enables you to build something else. So what is it that you're building that's attractive? So Web2 gamers need to see, first of all, games that are cool, unique, and fun. That's step one. And it's not just a clone of some other games. Well, I'll just play the Web2 version. It's and I have to do all this monkey around with a wallet, and I don't know. And then they start to think it's a scam. What do I have to do? That's number one. Number two, we need to speak to them. The onboarding needs to be seamless, and the technology is getting them. It's basically there. It's I think by the end of this year, it's going to be very, very polished. you got to talk to Web2 gamers in terms that they care about. Like they don't care about wallets and NFTs. What's a wallet to a gamer? It's an account. Okay. You own your account. What's an NFT? Well, I don't know. What is it? What is it in your game? With us, it's going to be a character. It's a character. You own your characters. You can trade your characters. You can trade characters outside. That's it. Well, how do you do that? Well, I mean, we use NFTs because the blockchain is really good for that. But what do you care? You know what I mean, like, you want to trade your character? Just go trade it. Here's a marketplace. Here's another marketplace. You can connect very easily. You got to speak to people in terms of their benefit, the benefit they have, not the underlying technology. They don't care about the technology. So don't call them NFTs because no one cares. It's just like no one talks about TCP/IP. They just talk about using an app, on their phone. It's like, who cares? I don't care what the underlying infrastructure is, or I don't care how you did it. Like, don't bother me with that. I think that'll help a lot. And I think that's definitely coming. So, the games have to be good and the players only care about the benefit to them. That's it.
And I think it's interesting because you're coming to the scene with a very different perspective than a lot of other people. We've had a lot of games in the past, and you can sometimes tell like, hey, these founders are coming here to make money with a game, raise funds, not only make a fun game, but also really attract a lot of the investor side. You're coming here saying, yeah, screw all that. Like, I just want to make a fun game that people can really enjoy and play, and that can penetrate to the Web2 audience. What would it take for Moonray to be a successful game in your eyes? Like, hey, if we can achieve these things, this is how we were going to be successful, and this is where I can go to sleep at night saying like, hey, my game was a success. And how do you guys plan to get there?
We want a million players and something like 40, 50,000 concurrent players. We want that. I don't know. Our goals in the next year. Maybe. Well, let's say by the end of the year we're ready for. So let's say end of 2025. That's where we want to be. A million players and 50,000 concurrent players. Then the online modes are going to be fun. It's always going to be people to play with at all skill levels, etc. That is what we would consider success. And the reality is, from our standpoint, even if you just look at this as a business, the best way to make money is to make a fun game. So you can't get away from that. It's like making a fun game is what makes sense. It's what's cool, and it's the best way to make money. Unless you just want to do a very short-term rug pull. Okay, I guess you could do that. But, we want to have a game that 8 years from now, it's Moonray Season 15, and we should be making way more money in Moonray Season 15 than we are in Moonray Early Access. And the only way to do that is to make something that's really, really fun, that keeps people engaged. You got to give them legitimate reasons to come and spend money with you. In other words, the way that we think about games in general, and especially when we look at, okay, what can Web3 bring to it? There is no way around the fact that the player has to pay you, the game, the developer. That's the only way this works. In too many Web3 projects, I think that they try and tell players, no, don't worry, we're going to give you money. It's not going to work. Of course it's not going to work. Okay.
Where does the money come from?
Yeah. So if we need the player to give us money, what can we give them in return? We can give them fun. And that's the basic deal. You give us money, we give you fun. There. If we can do that, then we're going to succeed.
I have a question here, and I think this one is going to be a little controversial just because a lot of the people that you're working with are friends and like we really like love them as content creators and everything. But with the goal of being, hey, we want to penetrate the Web2 audience. We want to penetrate the just the regular games, none of the Web3 crypto stuff. Working with purely, I don't know if maybe I'm just incorrect in this, but working with purely Web3 creators or creators that dominate in the Web3 space, how does that match the vision and the goal of like, hey, we're just going to have a fun game that reaches 1 million people when you're not focusing that audience yet?
Because there's a time and a place for everything, basically. There's a season for everything. Our initial community is going to be Web3. And they're the guys that are going to understand what we're trying to do with the technology and are willing to put up with the inevitable rough patches with the technology. The technology isn't there. No one has the solution yet, the really seamless onboarding experience where purchases are super easy. It's coming, right? So initially, Web3 guys, they understand that. They're willing to jump through some hoops. If they want to connect an outside wallet, they know how to do that. So during that early period where we're working on all the kinks and polishing everything, they're going to be more patient. They're the guys that understand. I think they understand the vision of what we're trying to do. When we see that everything is polished enough, and now it is like super smooth, the blockchain is invisible, only the benefits matter. So in other words, you can buy whatever you want. Credit card is seamless. We have trading. Everything basically works. Now you can start talking to the Web2 audience, because now the Web2 audience will see just the benefits of it. And they don't have to care about the technology. You've already worked out, all the kinks with the technology, essentially. So that's why. And the other thing is, in a traditional, like if we were just a pure Web2 game, Web2 audiences are brutal. They're absolutely, I mean, Web3 audiences are as well, but they're absolutely brutal. You do not launch until you're ready. You can't launch a prototype. You can't launch something that's not ready. I mean, like if you look at what goes into early access, typically like a solid early access, it's polished. I mean, it's ready. And in fact, look at, like big games on console. The day, by the time they announce it, it comes out 3 months late. It comes out just, weeks late. They don't announce it 5 years. I mean, like maybe they say, hey, we're going to work on a new game. Then they go into stealth mode. You hear nothing for 4 years. And the next time you see a trailer, the game is ready and it's ready within months. That's what Web2 is used to. So you can't go talk to Web2 until the game is there. And we're not there yet. We need, we need time. But the Web3, it enables games like us to get that early momentum and build up that core community that's going to be patient while we figure out, okay, what is the exact gameplay that we want? How much is it? Do we have mini bosses? No. Do we have this? Okay, now we've got the gameplay figured out. We've got enough maps. It's fun. We've got enough players. The servers are full enough. Okay, now let's go talk to Web2.
I love that answer. I really do love that answer. I think that's the way to go, because you're right. There's a lot of high expectations, and I think unrealistic expectations when a lot of games are announced, especially in this space. A lot of people, and I say this a lot to anytime anyone asks me like, oh, why are the games so bad in this space? And it's like, dude, realistically, most of the people who are playing games in Web3 right now are starting to try these early alphas or early betas or closed betas or whatever you want to call them, whatever stage they're in. Most of those people have never done play tests in their lives. They've never gone into just a Web2 game and play something super early, like you said, 5 years before it's ready. Like they're just used to like, hey, if something's early access, that's going to be out in 2 months and it's going to be already polished. And I think that's something that we're starting to get better at. I think people are starting to be more realistic when they hear like, oh, there's going to be a new game in open beta. They're not expecting something super polished. So we're already starting to have those realistic expectations now. But I think that is something that was missing for a long time. People were just expecting like, oh, this new game just announced. They sold their NFTs. It's going to be ready in 2 months and the game's going to be amazing. And then the game was gray boxes and there wasn't much to do and there was a lot of bugs and things like that. And the people are like, oh, this game sucks. Like it's never going to work. And when in reality, like the team was honest about it. Like, hey, this is going to take us a long time to build. You're here for the journey. What we're giving you guys is early access at the very start of the project. So I think you're coming at this in the right mentality. And I think I wish more games would have that as well. Like, hey, and thankfully, we're starting to pick up. It's not the same thing like it was when 2021 when you joined. Like a lot of games were promising the moon and the stars and the sun, and then failing to deliver on that. Like you had this amazing white paper, this amazing trailer, and then the game never came out. Like and I got burned a lot of those because I was like, oh yeah, like this is gonna be amazing, and I learned very quickly. Like a lot of times they don't have a working product in the background. So I think this is gonna be really amazing to see. But speaking back to the infrastructure that you talked about, I agree. Gamers aren't going to care about the infrastructure, but in the sense of like, hey, where we're building in the space that we're building, Web3 infrastructure does matter. Like, hey, will this be ready in time for the milestones that you're trying to set out? Where are you guys building Moonray on?
Right now we're on Ethereum mainnet. Now, obviously that's not going to work, in the long term. So we're looking at all the chains, we're looking broadly at all chains. We're, very happy with EVM and almost certainly, we're anticipating we'll probably stake EVM, so an L2 of some sort. And so right now we're testing now just to evaluate who has, like the right technology that can make the blockchain invisible or as invisible as possible. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting close. We think by the end of the year, we should have a very polished build where the game itself, from a pure game perspective, it's going to be small, right? So we'll have, let's say, 5 maps, not that many characters and not that many movesets, but it's very indicative of what the gameplay is. It's like a vertical slice, really. So even a Web2 gamer will understand, okay, this game is already fun. I can't wait until they add all these more characters and weapons. So you can see where we're going, but the core of it, instead of trying to do something very big where everything is shitty, make something small that's really, really nice. And then it's easy to think, okay, add more maps and it's going to be cool. So the game will be there. We think the onboarding experience by the end of the year is going to be very, very smooth. So in other words, download the game, make an account, password, email, or social login. Wallet as a service, probably behind the scenes, to create a wallet for the gamer. Gamer doesn't have to know about it. It's an account to them until they care about it. If you have an outside wallet, you can connect it. So if you went on a marketplace, and we'll be doing, rare drops or collectibles or things like that on outside marketplaces. So if you're really Web3 and you did that, okay, connect your outside wallet, whatever it is, and then now we know you have that. Now you get the in-game benefit, you get the cool look and the cool skin or whatever. But the average Web2 gamer is just making an account, putting in a credit card, and buying a battle pass. We think by the end of the year that will be up and running, and probably EVM almost certainly.
You don't have to answer this. Like, do you guys already have a couple of names in mind? Like, hey, we're looking at these places to build on. Because I think what you guys are doing is very smart. I haven't seen a lot of people. One of the mistakes that I think a lot of people make, especially when they're building in the space, they tie themselves to a specific blockchain or a specific ecosystem very early on, and those ties tend to be like very permanent. And it's going to be very hard for them to move to other places because all their stuff is already in one place. So what you guys decided to say, we're going to stay on mainnet. It's maybe not the prettiest thing, but we're just going to allow everyone to build, see who's building the best stuff. And once they have more things polished, then we're ready to choose where we're going to go. Are you guys already starting to look at a couple of names? You don't have to name them if you don't want.
No, we are. I mean, we're looking at, the top contenders and where you could imagine Base, Arbitrum, basically. I mean, that's really we're narrowing it down mostly between those two. Those other chains are really, really good that are a variant of it. Like Zai, I think is really cool, but they're, an Arbitrum L3. So they're really nice guys too. Really good team. We are looking at other blockchains, other L1s, but we just see a lot of risk. I mean, it's a problem. And it is, like you said, it's very permanent and very difficult to undo. And, imagine, are you playing any multiplayer game now? Who's running the cloud servers? Who's running the servers? Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not a feature. We don't say, hey, come play us. We're on AWS. Who cares? The gamer doesn't care. Nor would we ever say, okay, we chose AWS and now we're stuck and we can never go to Google Cloud or Azure or anything else. Like, why in the world would we do that? We see blockchains the same way. We're not going to pick an infrastructure and tie ourselves to them and then be stuck. So, that's why we do like where EVM is going and where the L2s are going, and interoperability is important. And in blockchain, we do think you can't just have one big chain. You'll never be able to deal with congestion. You'll never be able to deal with gas in the long term. It's not going to work. There will be multiple chains and L2s and L3s and all that kind of stuff, which then means interoperability is going to be really important. And that's why, personally, I like EVM a lot for that reason. I think EVM is going to go the right way, where you're going to have different chains, and, some are going to be gaming chains, maybe some chains specific for a game if it's big enough, but you can go back and forth between EVM chains pretty easily.
That's awesome. And I have one more question here that I tend to ask to games, and is one thing that because right now I feel like there's a lot of games right now that are in Web 2 that are maybe indie games that are seeing like, hey, there's a lot of opportunity in this space, but they're scared to jump ship. Do you have like a piece of advice, thing that you were like, hey, I wish I would have known this 3 years ago when we started, that would have saved us a lot of time, maybe saved us a lot of money, a lot of headaches, that people, maybe game developers that are watching this or someone that's watching this right now, that, hey, if you do this differently or if you keep this in mind, things may go smoother down the road? Make
decisions in some sense slowly when it comes to infrastructure. That's what saved us a little bit, that we didn't pick. When in 2021, when we were looking at everything, we said, we're going to go on mainnet and we're going to assume that we have to design a game that works on a slow blockchain with high gas, number one. So it's not going to be, and we already had that. We're not making an on-chain game. So by design, we don't have to talk to the blockchain that much, which means that we can be careful and slow in making blockchain infrastructure decisions. So that's, one of the things for any outside game that's looking in. It's like, oh, well, there's so many options. What do I do? Like, well, don't worry about it. Worry about the game first. What's the feature? What's the benefit you want to provide to the gamer, where Web3 infrastructure is going to help? And you worry about which infrastructure it can do that at the very, very end. You test everything. You don't need to pick a chain to test things. You don't even need to test on the blockchain. I mean, that comes at the very, very end, which is where we are now. Okay, we're going to get ready to launch. Okay, now we really have to pick, okay, where are we going to put this infrastructure? Who's ready now, today? Because blockchain moves so fast. Whatever narrative exists now, just wait 2 years. It's going to be a different narrative. So if you're picking something based off the narrative, the hype, the Twitter hype, which is what we see so much of blockchain to us, is just like, what's happening on Twitter? Oh, that's the hottest new thing. It's like, just wait 6 months. I mean, it's just a bunch of guys on Twitter, basically. Like, what's going to work? You got to kind of wait and see. So, I mean, again, I just, we keep saying over and over, I mean, Web3 is infrastructure. Don't worry about it too much. Think about the benefit you want to give to the gamer. And then when you're ready to actually start writing code and you need to write Web3 code, okay, then go out and do a technical evaluation like you would with any other product. I mean, when we pick like network service providers, we do the same thing. We look at a few, we test out who can run servers the way we want. And also we know today, this is going to be our service provider for servers. They're running servers. Like right now, we're running on AWS. It's great. 6 months from now, maybe not, because we already know our needs, where they're going. Okay, so we're not going to tie ourselves to anything. Don't write code that's only specific for them. Be ready to move to whoever can provide the infrastructure we need when the game is at the stage that it needs something different. And as long as you keep that in mind, then Web3 it's not that different from any other technology.
And one of the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the Web3 space, you already talked about some of how assets might fit into the system that you're building. For a lot of things, a lot of games right now, a token tends to be in sort of that mixture. If you guys ever plan to sort of add a token to the ecosystem, do you guys have already think about like what kind of utility or how it would fit into the economy of the game itself?
What we think, if you look at tokens and gaming more broadly, and if you look at, okay, if there's a game that has a competitive nature to it, competitive aspect, and there's good competitive dynamics, there's esports dynamics, etc. What can Web3 bring to that game that you can't do outside of Web2? And there's, and before you even get to a token, the fact that you can trade assets very easily, it's interesting. What if esports teams, what if you are tracking performance and kills per item? So an esports team that wins a whole bunch of tournaments with a certain set of skins. Okay, those skins are unique. You know them. Those are the skins that won this tournament, that tournament. Okay, is that interesting to an esports team? I think so. Into gamers more broadly. So you're tracking progression. So that's one thing that you can do in a competitive environment with Web3 on the NFT side. And then if you were to bring a token into it, what can a token do in a competitive game? Well, you could let people play with each other for tokens across borders very easily, actually more easily than you could with fiat. And it becomes a very interesting thing, especially if you're playing for something that you can use in game to unlock other assets. Now you can create an economy that's particular to your game, the same way that every Web2 game, does. Like so many Web2 games, they all have a hard currency, and you buy the hard currency and use it in game. Guess what? But you can't take it out. Okay, so let gamers take the hard currency out. Why not? I mean, what's the problem? Well, in a Web2 world, it's complicated, and there's regulatory issues like there is in Web3. But that's a feature that I think gamers will understand. All right, I'm going to buy 50 units of hard currency to do all the stuff in game and maybe enter a tournament. And if I don't like it 2 months, and that's fine. I can get out of the hard currency. That we can do. So that's where I think a token could be interesting. In a competitive environment with tournaments, token rewards, that's pretty clear. And it's a lot easier to give rewards in a token than it is in fiat, especially for an international game. And in this day and age, if your game isn't international, it's like, it will be. I mean, it's going to be. So what are you going to do? You have a tournament, you get people from Asia playing people from Europe, playing people from the US. How are you going to do that? Yeah, there are other solutions. There are Web2 service providers that's what they do. But okay, that's also what blockchain does. So you could use a blockchain.
Awesome. And for any gamers listening and watching this right now that are excited to try a PvP hack and slash and want to get in there in the arena and fight it out and try to figure out all the mechanics, what is available right now? How can they get access? How can they get started? How can they play? And for maybe people who can't get access right now, what do they have to look forward to in the next couple months? Where do you guys hope to start expanding more to allow more people to actually come in and play this? What does that roadmap look like in the next couple months?
So we're very close to having something that anyone can download. It's going to be public. We're very, very close. I can't give any dates because, and dates shift all the time, but it's very, very close. Right now, there are a number of people on Twitter. You can just look up Moonray Game on Twitter, and there's a bunch of influencers, and they have game keys, and they're giving them out. So get in touch with some of these great guys. I mean, all of them. A lot of them have game keys, and we'll give them more if they need it. And we're having regular play tests Fridays and Saturdays, usually about an hour, but people tend to stay more, which we love to see, which is great. Right now, that's the best way. But we are, in the coming weeks and months, going to open it up more and more to let more and more people into, like a public, alpha, because we need to start stress testing servers very soon before we do our public release. So that would be That would be it. Or, and honestly, just get into our Discord also. Get into our Discord and ask questions, and people will point you in the right direction.
Nice. I mean, there's a lot of things to be excited about, and that's the one thing I'm walking away from this conversation. I think it's very bold, and you don't hear a lot of people, a lot of founders, especially CEOs, talk about how, I don't know what's the right word for this, but maybe not necessary, but how, maybe not even insignificant, but how late in the process of building a game blockchain should really come into the picture. And I think a lot of people are thinking about it backwards. A lot of the conversations really do focus more of like, hey, this is why we're Web3, and this is why we're building a cool Web3 game, and this is why we're going to succeed. You're flipping it around on the other side. It's like, no, we're having a game, and all the Web3 stuff is just going to come at the end, and it's going to just make it work. But if we don't have a solid game from the very beginning, all that stuff doesn't really matter because no one's going to be playing it. No one's going to really be caring about all these assets that everyone else has to focus on. So that's really what I'm walking away with. It's like, you guys are really putting an emphasis on a really solid game that people want to play and that people are already enjoying it. And I think I haven't seen so many people waiting for Fridays to be able to say, hey, we're going to hop in and play that game again. And I know you guys just had the play test with the Wolves DAO, and you guys had everyone in the Wolves DAO. I saw Sam posting about it and talking about how much fun it is. And I think you guys are really holding on to something special because you guys are coming into this space with not only years of experience and an IP that has been around for multiple years, which is something that's not very common in the space, but also with a focus on gamers first. And I think soon people will really start to see that and really fall in love with that idea, because there's not a lot of, I can name maybe in the palm of my hand how many games are really having a focus on game first and everything else afterwards. So I really do appreciate that, and thank you for going ahead and spending an hour or 50 minutes here with me talking about everything you guys are building. So I really appreciate it, and I hope that people get as excited as I am about Moonray.
My pleasure. It's gonna be a fun summer. It's gonna be a whole lot more. So stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.